The colony ship Meridian's Hope had been humanity's desperate gamble, a last generation vessel carrying 10,000 souls away from a dying Earth. When it crash-landed on Kepler 442b, the survivors had no choice but to adapt. Among them were Eva Martinez, a former Marine Corps tactical instructor, and Oliver Chun, a structural engineer with a gift for improvisation. 15 years after landfall, the human colony of New Haven had grown into a modest settlement of prefabricated habitats and hydroponic farms. The colonists had made peace with the planet's native inhabitants, the Crescia species of small, furry bipeds with large eyes and curious dispositions. The Creche young, whom the humans affectionately called cubs, were particularly fascinated by human children and their games. Eva had taken to teaching the Creche cubs various Earth games during her off hours. It was meant as cultural exchange, a way to build bonds between species. Her favorite was hide and seek, which the cubs took to with remarkable enthusiasm. Their natural stealth and size made them exceptional hiders. Oliver often watched these sessions while running structural assessments on the colony's outer perimeter. "You're creating a generation of tiny ninjas," he'd joke. As cubs disappeared into spaces that seemed physically impossible, "They're learning spatial awareness and tactical thinking," Eva would reply with a grin. Besides, they love it. Neither of them realized how prophetic those words would become. The Zelnari arrived without warning on a cold morning in New Haven's second winter. Their ships descended like iron vultures, blocking out the twin suns. They were raiders and nomadic species that survived by pillaging developing worlds, taking what they needed and destroying what they couldn't use. The attack was swift and brutal. The Zelnari forces, standing nearly 8 feet tall with exoskeletons that could deflect small arms fire, swept through the outer settlements with devastating efficiency. Within hours, they had driven most of the colonists toward the central hub, network of interconnected corridors and chambers that Oliver had designed, using the natural cave systems beneath New Haven. Eva found herself coordinating the desperate retreat, her marine training kicking in despite 15 years of civilian life. Oliver was beside her, his tablet showing the colony's layout in glowing blue lines. "We can't fight them in the open," Eva said, watching another group of colonists stumble through the main entrance. "We need to funnel them. The central hub has dozens of choke points," Oliver replied, his fingers dancing across the screen. "If we can get everyone inside and seal the outer doors, we can control where they go. Then they'll just blast through. Not if we make them think there's an easier way." They shared a look, the kind of wordless communication that comes from years of friendship forged in adversity. Plan came together in minutes. They would lead the Zelnari into the hub's corridor system, where their size and numbers would become disadvantages. But they needed scouts, ones small enough to move through the maintenance ducts and service tunnels that honeycombed the structure. That's when Eva remembered the cubs. Within the hour, 30 Creche cubs had volunteered, their parents initially reluctant, but ultimately trusting Eva's judgment. She gathered them in the central chamber, kneeling to their level. "Remember hide and seek?" she asked in the pidgin language they'd developed. "Today we play for real. You hide, watch the big aliens, and tell us where they go. Just like we practiced." The cubs' eyes gleamed with understanding. They had been playing this game for years. Oliver had rigged communication devices, simple earpieces that transmitted to a central hub. As the Zelnari forces breached the outer doors, the cubs vanished into the walls like smoke. 3 groups. North corridor, came the first whisper-quiet report. 5 more. Trying the east entrance, came another. Eva coordinated from the central command post, a repurposed storage room with screens showing Oliver's mapped layout. The cubs' reports came in steady streams, painting a picture of enemy movements with remarkable precision. They're learning that the main corridors are too narrow for more than 3 of them abreast, Oliver noted, watching the patterns emerge. They're splitting up. Good, Eva replied. Now we make them pay for it. The colonists had no advanced weapons, but they had ingenuity. Oliver had spent the evacuation rigging collapse point support beams that could be remotely weakened, sections of ceiling that could drop, doors that could seal and lock. Each choke point became a trap. The Zelnari pushed forward confidently at first, expecting little resistance from what their scouts had reported as a primitive colony. Instead, they found themselves funneled into narrow passages where their numbers meant nothing. Ceiling sections collapsed behind them, cutting off reinforcements. Doors sealed, forcing them into longer routes where colonists could harry them with improvised weapons. And always. The cubs were there, watching from ventilation shafts and service tunnels, reporting every movement. They're getting frustrated, Eva noted, watching a group of Zelnari trying to backtrack only to find their path blocked. They're not used to prey that fight smart. The battle lasted 18 hours. The Zelnari, accustomed to quick raids where superior force carried the day, found themselves bleeding resources in a maze that constantly worked against them. Small groups were isolated and overwhelmed. Larger forces found themselves trapped in corridors that collapsed or sealed around them. By dawn of the second day, the Zelnari commander made the calculation that all raiders eventually must. The cost had exceeded the potential gain. Their ships lifted off, leaving behind damaged equipment and confused warriors who had never encountered humans before. New Haven had survived. In the aftermath, as colonists emerged from the hub to survey the damage, the Kresh elders approached Eva and Oliver. Through their translator, the eldest spoke. We watched the cubs. You taught them to play. They learned to fight. This is the human way? Eva knelt, exhausted, and smiled at a cub who had been particularly brave during the battle one, who had led a Zelnari squad into a dead end that Oliver had collapsed. We taught them to think, she replied. To use space, to be clever, to work together. That's the human way. We don't always win with strength. Sometimes we win by making the terrain work for us. Oliver added, pulling up his structural scans. Every building I design has choke points, fallback positions, defensive advantages. It's not paranoia, it's preparation. We learned this lesson the hard way, across thousands of years of human history. The elder tilted his head, a gesture of understanding. You do not fight like warriors. You fight like the planet itself turning ground into weapon. Exactly, Eva said, feeling the weight of 15 years of teaching, building, and surviving on alien soil. And your cubs? They might be the best students I've ever had. As New Haven began repairs, the game of hide-and-seek continued, but now with a deeper understanding. The cubs weren't just playing. They were learning humanity's oldest lesson, that intelligence, preparation, and knowledge of terrain could overcome almost any physical advantage. The Zelnari would mark Kepler 442b as a planet to avoid. Future raiders would read the reports of how a primitive colony had defeated a superior force and scratch their heads in confusion. But Eva and Oliver knew the truth. They hadn't won through superior technology or firepower. They had won the human way by teaching, adapting, and turning every disadvantage into strength. And it had all started with a simple game of hide and seek.